Imagine you're walking through a really quiet forest. It's dawn, the air is still, everything's kind of in soft gray tones. But there's one sound. It's not loud, but it's just this single repeating musical note.
Right.
Like a piano key is stuck, just humming constantly in the background. It just won't stop.
That is such a perfect image for deep regret. It's that lingering note, that thought loop that just won't fade.
If only I had.
Exactly. If only I had chosen differently, or why didn't I say something? And this isn't just, healthy reflection. This is the mind caught in a loop.
The reenactment.
Yes, a reenactment where the past is literally pressing on you right now.
And that tension, that constant demand for your attention, that's what we're going to deep dive into today.
Right.
But we're skipping the moral side of it. We're not here to talk about what you should have done.
No absolution here.
None. The mission is to understand this loop structurally, to see it as a problem of perception. We want to know why the mind gets stuck and maybe how we can let that note finally fade out.
And to do that, to really get the structure of it, we have to start with perception itself.
Okay.
The foundational idea in Gestalt psychology is that we don't just passively receive reality. We are. We're active organizers of it.
We're shaping it as we see it.
Constantly. The brain hates chaos. So it's always pulling certain details, we call them figures, out from the background noise, the ground. We're always seeking a clear pattern, seeking completion.
It's just a basic survival tool, right? Like you're in a crowded airport, you need to find your gate. That gate number becomes the figure, and all the noise and the people, that's the ground. You just filter it out.
Precisely. And the whole problem of deep regret starts when a figure, a mistake, a mischance, a word you said, resists that process. It doesn't fade into the ground like it's supposed to.
It lingers.
It lingers. It becomes what we call an incomplete gestalt. It's an unfinished structure, and it keeps demanding energy.
It's like leaving a sentence without a period.
Or hitting pause.
Right. Hitting pause just before a dancer lands a perfect spin, it leaves this aching, almost phantom limb feeling that you have to finish it.
Yes, and that incompleteness is what makes the memory so powerful. What's so fascinating structurally is how that incomplete figure hijacks your present.
How so?
Well, you might be sitting with a friend, having coffee, and everything is fine, but then suddenly that incomplete figure from the past just flashes.
And you're not really there anymore.
You're not there. You are back in that old room. You're reliving that moment of failure mentally.
So let's ground that. Let's say someone listening regrets a career move from 5 years ago. It cost them, money, stability.
Okay.
And they're trying to start a new business today. How does that old figure, that incompleteness, show up now?
It shows up as a distortion of the present. The figure of the past failure is so sharp, so insistent on being completed, that the present opportunity, the person you're meeting with, the tasks for the new business, all of it just blurs into the background.
It's all just ground.
It is. The if-only story wins the battle for your cognitive resources, and it makes the present feel, well, dull, almost impossible to really engage with.
And this gets us to that classic paradox that everyone knows. People tell you, just let it go, move on.
Right.
And the harder you try to push it away, the stronger it snaps back, sometimes with this wave of shame.
Yeah, and what we miss, what we don't realize, is that resistance is a form of attention. And attention is the food. It's the very thing that keeps this figure bright and sharp. Every single time you try to force yourself not to think about it, you're basically drawing its outline again.
So you're confirming its importance.
You are reaffirming its status as the most dominant, most important figure in your entire field of awareness. You're feeding the loop you want to starve.
That is a huge insight. So if fighting it makes it stronger, then the solution can't be about force. It has to be something else.
It has to be about changing how we perceive the whole field. We have to challenge that rigid perception. We think the event is the problem, but the real issue might be the structure we've put on it.
What do you mean by that?
Think about the famous Rubin vase illusion. You know the one? The picture with the two faces and the vase.
Yeah, you can see one or the other, but not both at the same time.
Right. The actual lines on the paper are fixed. They don't change. But the act of seeing determines what you perceive. Regret is kind of like that. It's not this fixed moral object we have to judge. It's a shape, a configuration that's just waiting to be recontextualized.
So that brings us to self-forgiveness, which traditionally we think of as this big moral act. I did wrong, and now I release myself from the debt.
But we're going to shift that focus completely. Let's define self-forgiveness not as a moral transaction, but as a process of of perceptual integration.
Okay, perceptual integration.
It's about finally allowing that painful event, that screaming figure, to sink into the ground of your awareness.
So it becomes part of the background.
Yes. Not because it wasn't important, but because its work as an active, demanding figure is finally done.
But I can hear someone thinking, doesn't that just feel like letting myself off the hook? Like I'm minimizing the harm I caused, either to myself or someone else?
That's a really important question.
Yeah.
And we have to be clear. Integration is not erasure.
Okay.
Closure doesn't mean pretending it never happened. Think of it like a wave in the ocean. The wave rises, it crests, and then it dissolves back into the whole ocean.
The ocean doesn't reject the wave.
Exactly. The water that made the wave is still there, but its separate, demanding form has vanished back into the flow. The memory remains a fact, but it loses its need to scream for your attention.
That makes so much more sense. You're moving from a position of battle to a position of inclusion.
The energy just gets reorganized, and that shift in perspective, that's where the freedom is. You stop treating your past self, the one who made the mistake, who was limited, as some kind of intruder in your present life.
That person wasn't a villain. They were just in process, just like you are right now. And when you can see that, you allow the past to become background, and you get there not by force, but by a fullness of presence, right here, right now.
So the pain we feel isn't just because of what happened. It's because of how our mind organized it into this structure that keeps demanding to be fixed.
We're seeking completion, not an impossible correction of the past.
That is the critical insight, isn't it? The mind confuses the impossible, undoing the event, with the possible, which is integrating it. The pain sticks around because of the structure, this vortex that pulls all your attention inward.
A vortex that demands an answer the past can never give you.
And you said earlier, this isn't just a metaphor, it's active.
It is an active configuration. It's real cognitive, emotional, and neural energy that's locked in a pattern, constantly humming, looking for a way to close the loop.
So that's why a smell or a certain song can just flood your system with that original shame even years later. That's isomorphism. The idea that this mental stuckness reflects an actual structural pattern in the brain that takes up energy. It's your brain running an old, inefficient program that costs a lot of power.
So it's occupying cognitive bandwidth.
Huge amounts of it. If your system is always trying to finish that old project, you have less energy, less attention for what's happening today. It literally reduces your capacity for creativity and presence.
Okay, so if the loop is the problem, the solution has to be changing the structure of the loop. How do we actually start to do that, to change the field, not the figure?
That's the key. You have to actively change the field, the context, not try to suppress the figure, the memory. You can't just will the dot to disappear.
But you can change the paper it's drawn on.
You can change the paper it's drawn on. Let's use that image. Imagine a small black dot on a bright white page.
It's all you can see. It dominates everything.
It screams for attention, right? Now, take that exact same dot, don't change it at all, and place it on a vast star-filled night sky.
The dot is still there. It's the same size, the same color.
Yes.
Yes.
But it no longer holds absolute power. It loses its absolutism because the ground, the context, has expanded to include infinite complexity and wonder.
So the work is to expand the ground.
That is the work of self-forgiveness. You expand the ground to include not just the sharp mistake, but the whole context. The fear you felt then, the vulnerability, the simple fact that all growth requires imperfection. You expand the field to hold all of you.
And when the field expands to hold the whole story, not just the one moment of failure, that's where the integration happens.
Yes. The memory stops being a weapon you use against yourself and becomes just one thread in a much larger evolving tapestry.
And then insight can happen.
You get Gestalt insight, which isn't just an intellectual aha. It's a perceptual reorganization. It's seeing the exact same event from a totally new structural relationship, one where you can hold the action and the humanity behind the action at the same time.
We've covered the event and the perception of the event, but there's one last figure that feels really persistent, and that's the self who believes it has to grant the forgiveness. This split between the judging I and the acting I.
And this is where it gets really profound. In every moment of self-blame, you're right, there's the self who did the thing and the self who now sits in judgment. We've created a figure out of ourselves.
A division.
A division. And what if that internal split is the last, most stubborn, incomplete figure of all? What if it's a perceptual illusion?
So why does the mind do that? Why do we create this judging I in the first place?
I think we split ourselves in two to avoid the The terror of wholeness.
The terror of wholeness. What does that mean?
Wholeness means accepting that you are a dynamic pattern, not some stable object. It means you contain contradictions. You have the capacity to love deeply and to cause harm, to see clearly and to act blindly, to hold all of that at once and say, this is all me. That's really challenging.
So the judging self is trying to create distance, to cast out the bad part so the good part can feel pure.
It's a purification ritual. But the deeper realization is this. When you can truly see the self not as a fixed thing, but as a continuous flowing pattern,
Right.
well, the need to forgive just dissolves.
Why?
Because there's no one separate left to do the forgiving.
That sounds less like an achievement and more like a collapse, a dissolution.
Think of a reflection on a perfectly still lake at dawn. The reflection of the I who failed seems so solid, so fixed. But when insight comes, when the wind stirs the water, that fixed figure fractures. It dissolves and it merges back into the whole lake.
So the duality collapses. Liberation isn't moral redemption, it's perceptual unity.
And the guilt then is seen for what it is. Not a stain on your character, but a signal, a historical marker of the care and the standards that were there all along, even inside the mistake.
The field hews itself by remembering, by putting all the pieces back together into one continuous body.
Exactly. The memory still exists, but now it carries you. It's part of the ground from which you rise, not a chain that holds you down.
So we've moved from seeking correction to seeking completion, from punishment to inclusion. Wholeness isn't about removing the broken pieces, but rearranging the light so even their shadows have meaning.
And it's important to remember, wholeness isn't a destination you arrive at. It's a rhythm. Emergence and dissolution. Figures rising and figures falling.
So maybe the deepest point of self-forgiveness isn't an answer. Maybe it's the silence after the question just stops making sense. It's the quiet when the internal courtroom finally empties out. Not because a verdict was reached, but because no one showed up to be the judge.
You are the field and you are the figure. And yet, look again,